In the West, some Orthodox Christians, in their eagerness to distance themselves from Protestant influences, have hastily dismissed important questions raised by modern biblical scholarship. One notable example is the issue of authorship and historical authenticity of biblical texts. These individuals claim that concerns over the historical authorship of the Bible are merely modern preoccupations irrelevant to the early church, but this claim is misleading. It is true that the intense scrutiny over authorship we see today emerged in the post-Enlightenment period. Concepts like questioning tradition and rigid evidence-based methodologies are part of the modernist mindset. However, many Orthodox Christians who dismiss the importance of biblical authorship fail to realize that they are still accepting conclusions from modern scholarship, conclusions that ultimately seek to discredit the authenticity and authority of the biblical texts. For instance, some say that even if Paul didn't write all the epistles attributed to him, it doesn't diminish their authority in the Bible. But this reasoning is flawed. The problem isn't whether Paul's writings match modern scholarly conclusions. The problem is that these scholarly conclusions are unreliable from the outset. The real mistake lies in the academic assumptions, not in the Bible's claims about its authors. It's also dangerous to suggest that ancient communities didn't care about authorship. Ancient Christians, while not fixating on authorship in the way modern scholars do, absolutely cared about the antiquity and the authority of their texts. The idea that authorship didn't matter to them is false. Take, for example, the fact that the book of Revelation wasn't universally accepted for centuries. This was largely due to the disputes over its authorship and authenticity. Clearly, early Christians deeply valued who wrote their sacred texts because antiquity confirmed authority. Ancient communities judged a text's authority based on its antiquity and adherence to tradition. For example, the Pentateuch was accepted as Mosaic not only because of the figure of Moses, but because its age signified its authority. If the Pentateuch were written much later, it would lack the authority that comes from its ancient origins. Similarly, texts attributed to the apostles gained their authority from their connection to these early church figures. Furthermore, works that were determined to be pseudepigraphal, falsely attributed, were often rejected because their teachings deviated from accepted doctrine. The early church scrutinized these texts, rejecting them for the lack of conformity to the Orthodox faith. Therefore, recognizing the true authorship of a text was essential for determining its legitimacy and orthodoxy. If a work was confirmed to be from its claimed author, the church accepted its teachings. If not, it was discarded. Therefore, many Orthodox Christians today fail to grasp a crucial point. Rejecting the biblical authorship as the texts themselves claim is not just a denial of historical fact, but a denial of the teaching and authority embedded in the scriptures from an ancient perspective. To suggest that only theological content mattered while disregarding the identity of the author is a fundamental misunderstanding. For the early church, authority linked directly to the ancient and apostolic origins of the texts. The gravest danger is this: when Christians deny the authorship as handed down by the church and accept the conclusions of modern scholarship that these texts are falsely attributed, they inadvertently undermine the authority of the scriptures themselves. They are actually saying those books are teaching heresy, and by doing so, they themselves become heresies. So the next time modern scholars challenge the authorship and authority of the scriptures, let's not be so quick to accept their conclusions. Instead, let's return to the mindset of the early church, where antiquity, authenticity, orthodoxy, and tradition were inseparable from each other.